Welcome back to the Stanford Cardinal Dynasty, where today, as you could clearly tell, as we don't have the normal intro, we are starting our next offseason. And the season, for the most part, went extremely well for the Cardinal with a statement game here against Akron in the New Orleans Bowl. After just missing the playoffs by 2 spots, finishing at 14, we were given the bowl game against Akron, and we felt disrespected. So we put up a big game here against Akron, 33-7, scoring 14 in the first, 10 into the second, and then so on and so forth. But it was a dominating performance, which we needed to apparently show the bowl committee. And that rounded off a year for the Cardinal that, again, went really well. This was the best season by far that the Cardinal have had in quite a long time. And it was really lofted by the 7-game winning streak that we went on throughout the entire middle section of the season. We had 3 bad games this year. We overlooked Liberty. They were ranked at that point. They ended up going on to have a pretty poor year for their previous year's standards, finishing 5-7. The other 2 were both to USC. We had a close game until the fourth quarter in week 11. We lost that game. It pushed us out of playoff picture. We then won the next 2 games very handedly, putting us back into playoff picture. And then in the Pac-12 championship, we lost again, which was a close game until that fourth quarter. So we need to improve this team so we could get over that final hump, win the Pac-12, and make the playoffs next season. Now, when I was watching Mr. Hurricane's previous offseason, someone said that in Bowl Week 3 is when you had the best chances to hire new staff, or the highest graded staff to hire. So we are going to test that here Week 3. As in one of our previous episodes before the Pac-12 championship, we fired our OC. Coach Barrington, he did a pretty solid job, at least in the bowl game, at being the fill-in for the OC, but now we need to find someone. Now what I'm looking for here is a tactician and motivator if he has anything outside of tactician. If we could find a scheme fit that fits the pro style that we run, all the better. So just looking through here, there is a 23 air raid, doesn't exactly fit our group, and that is it. Not a whole lot of options when it comes to OC. We also should take into account pipeline as well. Now, we already have Northern California, so we don't really need that. Most of our recruits come out of California, Texas, and Louisiana. So if we could expand that, all the better. And potentially, we could get into Florida here, Central Florida, with Nate Vick, or South Florida with Kenny Stick. Both are air raid. Again, that's really not what we're going after. The only other options, though, are spread. So we're probably not going to have a perfect offensive scheme fit. And after taking a look at all of these options, I do think Nate Vick is going to be the next best option for us. He doesn't exactly fit, and I'm going to tell you why. First off, prestige. I was hoping to find someone a little bit higher than a C. Unfortunately, C is the highest that any of these guys have. Other problem is he's a little bit more towards motivator. I was wanting a little bit more tactician. But still, those are the 2 areas we were looking for. No one else has these 2 quite filled out. There are a couple more that have like recruiting with a little bit, so it takes away overall from that. Coach Barrington, he's the recruiter. He's the reason that we have such a good draft class. We need help with the motivation and the tactician work, so we are going to hire Nate Vick. So that now makes our pipelines with Northern California with Coach Barrington. We now break into Florida, though the offer is pending. That's something I haven't quite noticed before. Maybe he might not even accept it. And then Eric Taylor, we do have the Big Apple, so we should look potentially a little bit more into New York. And all it took was just going to the next week, and indeed, Nate Vick does take the offer. He's going to be our new OC. And your national champion is Georgia. They just keep doing it. They defeat Michigan 35-28. Any surprises here was really just North Texas, and they actually knocked out Wisconsin in the first round, winning 12-7. They then lost to Michigan 48-22 in the next round. Pittsburgh, they defeat Texas A&M. They then lose to Kansas State, who then loses to Michigan, and Michigan obviously loses in the Natty. As for North Carolina, they take down Tennessee. They then take down USC 38-27. They then lost to Georgia. Clemson defeated Florida, and then Clemson lost to Georgia. Now, one interesting to note here as we take a look at the listing of award winners, we saw at the end of the last game that Tafiti was your player of the year, but he's showing here being 5th on the list, so that is interesting. Apparently it was a tied race and they gave it to Tafiti, which I'm not going to argue against. As for head coach of the year, it does go to Michigan's Greg Malone, but Coach Barrington did crack the list. He's just down here at 10. But one of the coolest things so far is Tafiti and Sony Fotu were the top 2 players for your best defensive player. Fotu didn't even start the full year, so potentially if he did, maybe he beats Tafiti in those rankings. But top 2 guys, that was a pass rush tandem for the ages. As for Donald Camp, he finishes 2nd in the list for best defensive back. But again, I remember seeing it listed that he was the best defensive back. So perhaps, maybe I read things wrong and it said that he was in the running for it. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check. But for some reason, it doesn't list him at the top, even though we got that graphic. And also just as cool is that Tafiti and Fotu were the top 2 for the Lombardi, which we saw Tafiti took last time. And it goes without saying that they would also then be the 2 top guys for best defensive end. But of course, the granddaddy of them all, Tavarua Tafiti, is your Heisman winner. The first player to win this award on defense since 1997, and the first Stanford Cardinal to win the award since sometime in the 70s. I want to say 77, though it might have been earlier, maybe 71 even. Either way, it's been an extremely long time. Stanford have had a lot of runners-up, but Tafiti racked up all of the sacks this year and very much earned this award, which is why it's extremely disheartening that for All-Americans, we don't have Tafiti on this list. Does not make sense for the first team. Instead, it is Colorado State's Whitfield Powell. Great name, but why is it not the Heisman winner? That doesn't make any sense. We also don't have Fotu on this list, nor any other Cardinal players. If we go to the second team, once again, there are no Cardinal players on this list, so we were short in the bowl game, and we don't land any of these All-Americans. That doesn't make any sense. We have to go all the way down to the freshman All-American team, and then we do get Antonio Asher. That one definitely doesn't make sense to me. I don't think he should have been an All-American. He didn't have that good of a year. And honestly, the amazement continues as we go to the Pac-12. Tafiti and Sony Fotu still are not on this list. Instead, we do have Rico Cote being first team at linebacker. That makes sense, but we should have some other guys on the first team. Second team, we finally find Tafiti. Again, we don't have Sony Fotu, and that is the end of that list. Just doesn't make sense. Freshman-wise, we do have Lemon at left tackle. He didn't start, nor really see any playing time, so not sure why he's on this list. Sony Fotu does make it for the freshman Pac-12, as well as Asher, who was on the National. So some weird things happening with these awards. Perhaps EA needs to just fix a couple things. Well, the last thing we have to do here in the end of season recap is take a look at these conferences and see who's moving up and who is moving down. As for the ACC, top dog was Pittsburgh. They obviously made it to the postseason. They didn't make it that far. As for bottom of the ACC, it is Virginia. They won more games than Wake Forest overall, but they only won 1 conference game, so they will be relegated. Taking their place is 18th ranked Duke, who go 11-3 and a 7-1 conference record. In the Pac-12, your winner is Kansas State, who went 12-13 with a 6-2 conference record, the same as about half of the conference. They just did better outside of conference play. As for the bottom team, it is Oklahoma State, who also have the same conference record as Missouri and Houston. However, they only won 2 games in total this year, so they will be moving down. In their place, North Texas, who did make it to the postseason, they'll be coming up. They lost 1 game in conference play, going 7-1. They went 12-3 in total. Big Ten, your winner is Michigan. They went 15-1 in total, undefeated in conference play. At the bottom of that conference, without a single conference win, is Iowa State. They went 3-9 in total, 0-8 in conference. To replace them, Miami of Ohio, who finished the year at 16, 11-3 in total, 7-1 in conference. Pac-12 winner, we know, is USC. Very unfortunate for us. Had 2 chances at them. They go undefeated in conference play and 12-2 on the season. Bottom of our division is Washington State. However, San Jose State nearly went back down to the Mountain West. They'll be staying in as the Cougs drop. They will be replaced by Wyoming, who go 7-1 in conference, same as Nevada. Wyoming also had the same record in total as them, going 9-5. They just finished on top. Georgia, they go 15-1, 7-1 in conference. Tennessee also went 7-1. Memphis, they don't win a single game this year in conference or in total, so they will be dropping down. In their place, Ole Miss will be moving back up. They were relegated last year, so they bounced right back, going 10-4 with a 7-1 conference record. They squeezed by UAB, who went 6-2 in conference. Well, we're not going to forget about the Independence Army. Vastly outdoes the rest of them, going 9-4. Air Force goes 5-7, and then Navy 3-9. But here is where true offseason really begins. Players leaving. We already know we had 9 seniors. Who all else is going to look to go? As a reminder for house rules, any player projected to go into the draft, 3rd round or higher, we will not negotiate with. If any running back decides they want to declare, we will not negotiate with them because running backs have a short NFL career. We're going to get them up there as quick as possible. So players leaving. We only have 2 players looking to transfer. Miles Jackson, 100%, I am perfectly happy with him moving on. He doesn't have a chance to get to that starting spot. He's going into his senior year. I think he should have a chance to play elsewhere. As for Chico Holt, he is another guy I am perfectly happy with letting try to go to whatever team he wants to. We've got a lot of other tight ends, and he doesn't quite have the speed that we're looking for at tight end either. So again, 2 guys leaving I am perfectly happy with, but how about draft prospects? We only have 1 projected to go to the draft. That does not make any sense here. If I go down to left end, Tafiti, not projected, not even a 7th round pick. He was the Heisman winner and had 20 sacks this season, 34 TFLs in total. I don't know how he's not going. That doesn't make much sense to me. I was wondering if we would see Bachmeier also make it. Borden hits 87 overall as that 7th round. Perhaps after we get to the next stage and these guys leave, we'll have a few more than just Borden end up going, but that's a little bit surprising. I mean, Irvin is only an 84 overall, so I get it. I think that's what's holding back Tafiti at just an 86. They want 87 or overall or higher, so we'll see if the stats change that. Otherwise, Tafiti is going to be a major get as a UDFA. And draft results do have Borden going round 5. Bachmeier squeezes in round 7, but Tafiti does not get drafted. That does not make sense to me. He was shorted on All-American in all of the categories for national, barely makes it in the 2nd team for the Pac-12, isn't drafted, doesn't get shown to be best player despite winning that award, wins the Heisman, and he's not drafted. I don't know the last time a Heisman winner was not selected within the first 4 or 5 selections? I don't know. I think there's some weird things happening. Maybe Tafiti just decided to retire. But that does send us here into off-season recruiting. And as it stands right now, we have the 2nd best recruiting class with 5 5-stars, 19 4-stars. We did add 2 3-stars, one of which being a punter, the other a corner who looks very promising. Corner was a gem. We are 0.3 points behind Alabama, but we already brought in a total of 26 players, and we had 11 leave with the 2 transfers, so we're well ahead there. So we're not going to be looking at any high school prospects. What we are going to take a look at is the transfer portal. See what our options are, and it doesn't look like there's a lot that are already looking at us. We do have a few corners, a running back out of Louisville. In fact, one of the corners is even from a rival school of ours. That's interesting. And an outside linebacker, pass cover guy out of Iowa in David Easton. That is interesting. And for Jackson, he does land himself here 3rd on the list for quarterback. So hopefully he goes somewhere really cool. And for him, we will check in on that. But none of the quarterbacks are taking a look at us. As for our other transfer, Chico Holt, he is 3rd for tight ends. There is the running back we talked about in Kewan Brown out of Louisville. I just don't think we need a running back at this point. We have our 2. The spot I would have considered would be at, there is a fullback interested, but the spot I was considering was at receiver. But it doesn't look like we have the play style. Seems to really be the big problem here. There was play time, but we are already locked out for the receiver Iverson Hooks from UAB. So yeah, it just seems like we weren't giving enough people the ball. We are also locked out for the guy from Toledo, whose name I would butcher. We're just going to call him Quincy. So that's unfortunate. So there were a couple guys who maybe we had a chance, but we are just not quite meeting the lockout for them. Now, here is an interesting player for us to go after. Help for the offensive line. A 4-star from Queen Creek, Arizona, previously was at Boise State, 6'2", 270. He is an agile style. We're a little bit more towards the power, but that could be a decent guy, at least to check in on. So we'll add him to the list. Now, good news for us is the top 2 corners were the ones interested, Brandon Page and Zabian Brown. Brown would be a senior. He's a zone style at 6 foot 180. Page would also be a senior man style at 5'9", 187. I would like to check them both out because corner is a little bit of a concern heading into next year. Fausto Ramos just graduated. He was another guy who didn't make it to the NFL, though maybe a UDFA. Corner is concerned. So we're going to take a look at those guys, and neither of the safety spots have any interest in us. So it's going to be a pretty quick offseason bit of recruiting here. There are 3 players that maybe we'll end up going after, which means we should be able to fully scout them and decide how many points we want to get them, and if we want to bring them in on a visit to try to land them. Now for the guard. He's got a lot of strength, 96, so he's still a bruiser despite being an agile guy. 88 lead block. I mean, there's a lot of good things here. Run block is below an 80. He will be a junior. Pass blocking is pretty good. I mean, there is a lot to like here. He has the golden quick step and the silver for quick drops. So I think we will go ahead and go after an offensive lineman here, and we could go fully after him, send the house, as well as scheduling a visit. Now we know that he's interested in play style, so we'll go ahead and tack that on despite it just being a B. Now for Page, I would love to find a guy here who has some press ability, because we didn't have that last year, especially with Asher. We have good speed, good man at 85. Again, he is a senior. Change of direction is really good at a 99. And he does have 78 press, so it's not awful, with very much potential of turnovers, interceptions with 88 catching. Maybe he could even play receiver at 5'9", 187. We could take a look, because we'll go ahead and offer him a deal as well. Send the house, and he is pro potential is his deal breaker, so we'll make sure to add that on here. Unfortunately, it is another one that is still a B, but should be just fine. And then for Zabian Brown, he is the zone type. He is out of California, and he has 95 speed. It's still not great press. He also has 74 for man. Zone is 86, so he's a little bit more balanced there than a lot of the other guys that we have had. I think it's another one that we go ahead and bring him in because, again, we don't have the sure starters for next year. Even Asher has been a little bit concerning. Playing style is his deal breaker, so we'll make sure that that is his thing here. 10 practice for him, and that's pretty much all we have here for the recruiting. We do have 15 more points we could add to these guys, so I will do that, and we'll see if they decide to join. And we land our first one, Zabian Brown out of Santa Ana, California. We land the 4-star. I don't remember if he was the zone or man, but both corners look pretty good. Do we land anyone else? No. The other corner in Page, who was the man-to-man, he decides to go to Oregon. And in the following week, we do land the guard, whose name I am going to have to learn how to pronounce. That's going to require a Google search. But we land 2 of the 3 transfers we were looking at, and that rounds out our recruiting class. We officially finish a good handful of points behind Alabama, but the second best recruiting class, that is not too bad. Alabama looked to add 1 extra 5-star. We did have more 4-stars, but they brought in a lot more 3-stars. We just didn't need to bring in anyone else. We finish about 11 points higher than Georgia, but we also finish about 7 points behind Alabama. As for Miles Jackson, his new team is Arizona, so hopefully we face them this year. If not, maybe we try to find a way to schedule that anyway, because we haven't played against them, I believe, so far in this series. We have played against Arizona State. As for Chico Holt, he transfers back to his home area. He's from Houston. It's not exactly going to be in Houston, but he is going to be at Baylor, so good for him to head on back home. Hopefully, he finishes off his career pretty well. But now the fun part comes where we get to realign this roster and also find out some early ratings for some of our players. So going through this list quickly here, we bring in Nick Terrell, one of the quarterbacks who's a 76. That's the same overall coming in as our last 2 recruited quarterbacks in Montrell Avant and Azuma. Now both will have a chance to progress as we get to that point. Terrell will not, but he's going to come in with 87 speed. It's going to be the highest that we had. With 94 throw power, he could be a very good balanced style quarterback here who could throw the ball as well as run the ball around a little bit. He will most likely be redshirted. As for our 2 running backs, and the reason that we didn't try to bring in that running back in the transfer portal, Thompson is going to come in at a 76, and Sulai is going to come in at a 74. So we should be pretty good for the future, as we are going to have Dorian Williams and Xavier Joshua graduate after this year. At receiver, we do land 2 pretty good freshmen here. Actually, make that 3. If the ratings were to stand, they would be seeing playing time immediately, and they still might, depending on how the ratings improve for some other players. But Morgan Harvin, he is the 6'4", 212 physical guy, but he has 92 speed. Moses, he's 6'5", 198, 93 speed. And then you had the 6'2", 200-pound physical guy again in Lanier with 93 speed. So we brought in a lot of speed and size here, and they're all about the same overall, 75, 75, and 74. At tight end, we added 1 guy to replace Chico Holt. Not that we knew that was going to happen, but it did, in Curtis Aneni. He's a 73 with 86 speed. Along the offensive line, we didn't add too many, but 2 solid guys here in Enrique Heath and Christian Cisco, a 76 and 74 respectively. And the last high school player, Kona Osgood at right tackle, he comes in at a 76. And as for the guy whose name I need to learn how to pronounce, he comes in at an 83, and we're not going to see those ratings improve. So where he finds a starting spot, it's going to depend on how some of these guys improve. Potentially left tackle could be an option. We did see that he was a good pass blocker, so that could be an option for him. We should be perfectly fine here at center. In fact, the whole rest of the group looks like it's taken care of, so maybe he finds his way to the left tackle spot. Getting to the defensive side, Cassius Sampson, he's brought in at a 74 overall. At linebacker, we have Kiki, again a name I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce, but he's an 80 overall. He was one of the 5 stars we got out of Honolulu, Hawaii. So he will most likely be getting starting time this year over probably Stevenson. Unfortunate for the junior who has been developing. We also land Deshaun Kamara, but he's going to be switching to an edge guy, so 74, that could go up or down. Now, the other off-ball backer spot, we have Afa Ivy, who is another 74. And then at the middle linebacker spot, we brought in 3 more linebackers, Darian Sr., who's a freshman, 74, as well as James Tuttle, and then 73 for Oscar Coley. Now at corner, we've got a lot of different guys here, and they're all going to be kind of fighting to find a spot into that starting group, which is why we brought in as much help as possible. Brown is the new addition, and he's an 84 overall and will be staying at that spot. So someone like Max Scott, Nicholson, they can improve, jump over him. There is also the true freshman in Alex Marcook, who is an 80 overall. We have Tim Easy, who's a true freshman, 76 overall. So we should be pretty good here, and we might actually have to start making some cuts. We'll see how far over we are. So Mapua, 73, is a true freshman, and Chad Johns, a 73. Rounding out that group is Al Page, who's a 66. He was the gem, so he's most likely going to be redshirted, and we'll see if down the line if he can improve. At safety, we did add Max Schlegel, and he is a 73. And lastly, we did bring in a punter, Fatele Mays. He's a 70 overall. So that is the overalls of all the new guys. Whether that stays, depending on if they switch positions. So let's go ahead and run through those, as we did have two athletes, both of which I believe, and indeed, are quarterbacks. So we should be good at quarterback for a while. Gordon Draft, he does have some ability to play a running back at 6'5", 223. That's a little bit too tall. We will add him to the quarterback spot, and he will be a 74. Now, as for Trey Sutton, he's listed here as being a better running back, a 76 overall compared to yet another 74 quarterback. At 6'2", 196, he could play running back, and Stanford has done that with real-life Ford. For us, that's Parrish. Now, if we do just take a look at Trey Sutton's ratings to get a better grasp, he only has 84 speed, and I don't like that for a running back, but we will see what the rest of the ratings look like. As for carrying, he is at an 83, ball carrier vision 79. I mean, he definitely has some decent ratings. He's not going to be doing much trucking. He's got an okay speed. Juke looks pretty good. He even has some solid hands as well, with actually some decent short route running. Probably not enough to be a receiver, though he does have 81 release. He could play at receiver. That would be interesting with 96 jumping. Again, though, the 84 speed is a little slow. 91 throw power. Well, the accuracies are pretty good. I think he's gonna stay at quarterback. If we run into trouble with running backs or receivers, he could definitely switch to that spot. But for now, we've added 3 quarterbacks this season. So that group is looking very deep, as you got Brown, who will improve, Avant and Azuma as well. Then you got Terrell, Sutton, and Draft, all very close overall. So we should be pretty good for our future. Now, the last thing we're going to do here is switch the lineman. Deshaun Kamara, who was recruited as an outside linebacker, he's going to switch over to left end. He stays the same overall. So what I'm going to do here is just run through all of the offensive linemen real quick, and probably the defensive linemen. Make sure guys are set up in their right spot, and then we'll move on to the player upgrades. And I ended up only having to change one player's position, and it was that guard that we did move to tackle. But now, we've got to find out how these upgrades hit and how well they hit or didn't hit. So let's see how many 90+ overalls we have heading into our next season. And it's just one. I expected a little bit more. If I'm being honest here, we had a few guys in that 86, 87 range, and we just have one hit. Rico Cote is our first 90 overall. He was the guy that we recruited. He is only a junior, so he still has some time to increase, but potentially he might look to go to the draft after this year. He's got a lot of good physicals and mentals. Roth is a true 88 as our second highest, tied with Antonio Asher, who hopefully did see some improvement to his press. We'll go through each of these position by position, and Elijah Brown, I'm not sure if he improved at all. He might be at his caps. We'll take a look here. The senior quarterback, he is not capped out. He just didn't perform all too great last year, so he didn't see much increase. His accuracy's medium is actually looking pretty good. That's a 94. And then about mid-80s for the rest. As for his arm, is still at a 92. He has some elusiveness. I don't know if he really increased that speed. Probably not. Still at a 79. Now, as for the other quarterbacks, Avant and Azuma, they both went up maybe 1 or so. Running back wise, Parrish did go up 3 overall to an 86. though he's a true 84. He's seeing some of those pluses due to our coaches. As for Montreal Dog, he's still not into the 80s, so he didn't see much improvement, but he's going to see a larger workload this year. Now, the receiving group looks very raw this year, so we're going to rely a lot on the running backs. Haddad has not seen much progression. He could be close to his caps. I don't remember his caps being great. Yeah, he could improve route running a little bit, which he does need some help at. He has the release and the short route running. It's just anything downfield he's not so great at. Hands can improve a little bit, but he's pretty much capped out, and he is a true junior. Now, here's a fun one. Blousey actually ended up growing a lot and jumping over Ed Keenan. So we might have Keenan play the slot this year and Blousey go to the outside. How's the catch in traffic is actually much better for Blousey. So do we have a big slot man or do we put Haddad on the slot? What are the releases for these guys? They'll have decent release. In fact, the whole team outside of Carmona, who's still buried. He didn't see much of any improvement this year. He played a little bit last year. He might get redshirted this year. But yeah, he doesn't have great release. Everyone else does have some solid release, so it should be interesting this year. I think it's going to be all hands on deck. I could also see us keeping 2 of maybe 3 of these freshmen actually active. And then if we don't use them, redshirt them at that point. Because we don't have a whole lot of depth outside of that is pretty trustworthy. We're going to rely a lot here on some freshmen for the receiving group. Tight end wise, I don't think Buck improved at all. He's still an 80 overall. I'm pretty sure that's what he was at last year. And he's completely capped out, so he's not going to improve at all. He's a junior. Now, as for the offensive line, Will Carrington did improve. He's going to be a redshirt senior for us. We have a battle here at left tackle. Now, obviously, the strength is going to go to the new guy. Awareness, however, that's going to go to Will Carrington. Pass blocking, can't really beat a 92 there. Across the board, he's the better pass blocker. He's not the better run blocker. So we might have to keep an eye on that left tackle spot. If we're struggling to run the ball, maybe we go with the new guy. If we're giving up too many sacks, Carrington would be the ideal candidate. At left guard, Baklenko is at a true 87. I don't think he really improved much. Barden did jump up a little bit, both of which are seniors this year. So we're going to need to recruit some offensive linemen. That seems to be for sure. Roth is now a true 88, 89 showing. Byam did not improve much. And in fact, Boone took a good jump. Those two are now a lot closer. At right guard, Pale, again, maybe saw a little bit of some improvement, but nothing drastic. He's going to be a senior. We have quite a few seniors along this offensive line, but we've got some good depth behind. And at right tackle, Simmons still holds the first spot there at an 86 overall. Laws at an 82, and again, another pair of seniors. Now there is the big jump. Going from a 79 overall, Joe Nelson, who got benched last year for Sony Fotu, now has another opportunity to start. Now, he did see the occasional playing time last year in rotation, and he did make some plays. And with that, he's up to 91 power moves. We also have 88 finesse moves here for Cook, so we might see a little bit of rotation, but Nelson is definitely going to be in that starting spot this year, given another chance, and he still has potentially 2 years. Fotu also, he took a pretty good jump. He was a 76, 78 or so last year. He's up to an 86. He's got 88 for his power moves, not much finesse, 75 block shedding. But he's got good strength and good speed. If he does anywhere close to what he did last year, he'll still be fantastic. Carlisle does go up a little bit. He's going to be a redshirt freshman. Maybe we'll see some playing time. And then down the middle, Howerton, 85, Ume, 83. Cantwell does not improve very much, the former 5-star. We then have Levine, who maybe went up a little bit, but again, not by much. So these guys who aren't seeing the field, they're definitely not getting as much progression. Getting to outside linebacker, staying on top is the true freshman in Kiki, who is an 80 overall. Stevenson, again, doesn't really see any improvement. None of these guys really did. At linebacker, middle linebacker, Richardson, he's up to an 85. He's going to be a redshirt junior. Mattingly, same at an 81. Roseboom, an 81. So he's still trying to find some playing time, and perhaps he needs to fight with the 5-star in Kiki. At the other outside spot, we already saw Rico Coat the first 90 here. and really get no improvement from any of the guys below. Now corner, we saw Asher 88. Scott is at an 85. Hennessy adds his name to this group here as he jumps up to an 85. So perhaps these freshmen that we have here, despite them being really good, we could let them sit, as playing time doesn't seem to be a deal breaker for any of them. So Markuk, who was a 5-star, still looks like he has a lot of talent. We could let him stew for a little while and see those ratings hopefully increase next year. And for Brown, the guy we brought in, he might be at the bottom of the depth chart. He does have good speed. Hennessy has the best, though it's Scott who actually has the best acceleration. Awareness-wise, it does go to Brown and Asher. Play rec is all Asher by a good handful. As for man coverage, I would be perfectly happy with honestly any of these 4 getting the start. Brown doesn't really provide much of any of the man coverage, though he does have our best zone. So the only even guy is going to be Asher, 84 man, 84 zone, and the press did improve. That was in the mid 60s, so that's now up to a 75. Maybe we could do a little bit more press. Nicholson is the best press guy, but he's got no zone coverage, and Scott doesn't really have much of the zone either, so it's probably going to be Asher on one side, Hennessy on the other, and then for that third spot in the slot, tackle-wise, the guys that are the best at it are already starting on the outside, so maybe Nicholson in the slot, and we still keep these other guys redshirted. We got some things to work out when it comes to the slot corner, and we might even pull on some of these safeties as well. And Atkins actually jumps way up here at free safety, and Sumlin is getting left behind a little bit. A 78, he's been our starter, but it's hard to continue to start a guy when he's not seeing those ratings increase, and he's not at his caps either. He's just not progressing. He's impact, so that's kind of like star dev, but he's just not growing, which is weird. So he potentially could be jumped by Atkins here. Sumlin does still have the best zone coverage. Play rec is not the best. Awareness is not the best. I mean, Atkins really should see some playing time. He also has our best tackling, so we have a decision to make here at free. At strong, Camp is at an 87. And he's someone who maybe could play a little bit in the slot. We have a little bit of some balanced guys here that could play. Shea, I don't remember if he was a corner or not, and I moved him to safety. I believe he was. You might even be able to put Chris Chapman there as well. We got a couple guys that can play the slot, that's for sure. And as for our last guy to see some improvement, ETN, he has 88 for kick power, 89 for accuracy. So he's not going to be hitting from the deepest parts. Anywhere, I would say 55 plus is probably out of his reach. But inside that, he's going to be pretty accurate, as long as I don't mess it up. But the problem that we're probably going to run into here, as we brought in 28 new players and we only had 11 leave, we're most likely going to be over our limit. So we're going to have to encourage some transfers. And indeed, we will have to. We're going to have to ask 12 guys to move on, as we are well over our limit. So going position by position, I don't think quarterback is the place to start. Where I think we're going to have to ask guys to move on is going to have to be here at running back with both Williams and Joshua. They've been here since game 1, but there's no chance they're really going to see the field. Dog is our second guy, and if we have to pull either Thompson or Sulai in, then we're going to do that. I think we got to make our first cuts here, and maybe we'll see them join because these guys still could move to a different team. The next spot here at receiver, and Martin Salinga we are going to move off from. He was a redshirt for us last year. Even after that, he's still not into the 70s. We're moving up here, so he's moving on. And we already are going to be losing Thomas Fleming after this season, and he's not really going to see much playing time this year. Maybe if it was a 3 tight end set, but we do have the freshman here in Curtis Aneni. We like going after tight ends in the recruiting class anyway, so we will be moving on from him. Another senior will be moving on from here at the left end spot in Braden. I would butcher that last name, so I'm going to skip it. Hopefully he finds himself a new landing spot. And at DT, we'll go with the redshirt freshman in Demetrius Ebron. I remember bringing him in. We've just got so many other good guys ahead of him. He probably wouldn't see any playing time, so he'll be encouraged to transfer. Another redshirt freshman, Chester McKee, we are also going to move off from because he didn't improve anywhere and he's kind of stuck in between two positions, and he hasn't improved to go towards either one of them as either an edge rusher or off-ball guy, so McKee will transfer as well. Sticking in this same group, Jaleel Parker, he doesn't have any way to play outside of maybe some special teams. We've got guys who could play in his stead. He will move on. Now, as for our first redshirt junior here, we're going to go with Bo Tate. He's stuck underneath some guys. Now, he would help us fill out some possible future play, but these guys are in their 80s. I think it's best we keep them around in case of injury this year, so we will let go of Bo Tate. At free, Javion Randall. He doesn't even have a face scan or a face AI made. I don't know how they make the face things here, but he doesn't have any one of them, so we'll be moving on from him. Now, I know we just talked about Shea having maybe the chance to play some slot. He's a senior. He'd be moving on already. There are two guys ahead of him, so he will be the next one to go, leaving us still having to cut one more player. And that last one is going to be Keegan Freeland. He's a redshirt sophomore who just got jumped by a redshirt freshman. They're both 71 overall. We're going to let the older guy go. So Freeland, appreciate you, but we had to make that cut, and now we sit here at 85. And as we continue kind of along that same step, now we actually have to do the custom conferences, which is moving teams around due again to the relegation and promotion. So for the ACC, we had Virginia Tech do the worst, so they will be switching over to the American with Duke, who won that conference. The Big Ten bottom was Iowa State, so they will be moving over to Conference USA with Miami of Ohio moving up. Big 12 Oklahoma State sat at the very bottom. They'll be headed over to the MAC, replacing North Texas, who made it all the way to the college football playoff, so they definitely need to move on up. As for the Pac-12, it was Wazoo. They'll be moving to the Mountain West, as Wyoming ended up winning that conference. And for the SEC, the worst of the bunch here, Memphis didn't win a single game. They're going to the Sun Belt. UAB, very close, but it's going to be Ole Miss moving back up. Now, the last thing we have to do here is I had someone reach out and comment that we should move where we had the Pac-12 championship. I put it as the Rose Bowl. I had a memory for some reason. I don't know if it was true or not that they played a Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl. That might not be the case. So we're going to change it. And the two options that we have, SoFi being one of them, which would be fairly-ish close to where we just had it, which was still in LA, UCLA Stadium in the Rose Bowl. The other option, Allegiant Stadium, which is the Raiders Stadium, and that is where, when I looked it up, I saw that they actually had planned to play it or did play it at. So we're going to go with Allegiant Stadium, though we might switch it perhaps every year, go Allegiant, then SoFi, and bounce back and forth. Now looking into next year, we have our first look at what our schedule looks like, and I did run through this real quickly, and Arizona is not on the list, so Miles Jackson is not currently slated for us to play against, and it wouldn't make sense to add a team from our conference to play against in our non-conference. The one thing I would like to do would be to move Notre Dame up to one of the earlier games. I don't want them right after Oregon, but in one of these first few weeks, I think that would be good. I also want to make sure that we are playing some tougher competition this year. We have been starting week 0, going on the road to Hawaii and playing against Hawaii. And while that's been fun, I think it's time we step up our competition and see a few new teams. And here's what I have in mind. We're going to start with 2 games against Texas teams, going against Baylor in week 1. That's going to be at Baylor. And hopefully we'll find Chico Holt out there. We'll do a little group photo at the end, but we want to pick up the win. Next, we return home as we welcome Texas in. Then we have our Notre Dame game that's going to be at Notre Dame. We then get into conference play. Arizona State, Oregon have our bye here week 6, a little middle of the season rest up for us. Week 8's going to be a big one. I want revenge against USC. We play against Wyoming first time in conference. And then I scheduled Army here for us to host week 13 because they've done so well. They've consistently had a 9-win season or around a 9-win season. So we're going to see how well they do this year and play against the option offense because we haven't done that yet. Also, one good thing about this schedule is we have 4 home games to finish the season. If we really need that push, we have it. That also helps us out in terms of recruiting, as we just have one of our other home games here early on in week 2. We'll probably hit into teams' top 5s by about week 4. We then could schedule to start to get those visits. I would like to maybe have a home game in week 5 or week 6, but I like the bye there. We can't change the conference ones. So hopefully this will be a better schedule for us when it comes to recruiting, and after we land our first few, it helps us out with any late pushes we need to make. And quick change here to the schedule before we get going. Army has been moved up instead of being our final game of the season because that's the big week for their Army-Navy game. Completely forgot about that. So that's been moved up here to week 0. So we'll open up the season against Army next time, then we get into the Texas games. And speaking of recruiting, how about we set up an early board here? We're not going to go too in-depth at this point, but I do want to see what options we have taking a look at 5 stars. We barely missed the playoffs, and we do still have quite a few 5 stars interested. But before we go into that, take a look at the team needs here. We have 14 players leaving. You might be able to toss in a few more for guys that transfer. So that means we need to go light on this recruiting class. Really go after some top end talent. And if we don't land them, I don't want to fill with just some soft talent. And we don't really need to go after quarterbacks, though if there's a 5-star, we definitely will. I think the biggest need for this offense is going to be tight end. And it looks like mostly just guard. We do have 2 seniors graduating at right tackle, but we have a fair few spread out. We have 3 freshmen there as well. Defensively, big hitters are going to be corner. We do have 2 seniors leaving, but we have 5 freshmen. Maybe some linebackers, but again, we could spread things out. We don't have any dire needs at this point, which is great. So going back to those 5 stars, there is a safety, a left end, an athlete, quarterback in Ian Bayless. So he might be our guy of the future out of Sammamish, Washington. There is another quarterback here out of Hawaii. I'm probably going to butcher the name of the place in Hawaii and probably the name. Savoy, maybe, is the last name. Probably not. But a quarterback there, a corner here, another safety who's ranked 7 overall, and another quarterback. We really don't need all of these quarterbacks. That is for sure. We have plenty of them. Though I do like the size of the guy out of Hawaii. So I will add him to the board. I'll add the other guys from this board as well. Now, past those 5 stars, there are some position groups I think we could look to go after. Are there any tight end 5 stars? There is one in Emmanuel Gomez, 6'3", 267. He is possession. That's the kind of tight ends I really like. Out of Scottsdale, Arizona. It's not a pipeline despite it being fairly close, but we will add him to the list. Additionally, with our thinness at receiver, what options do we have? Well, there are 2 that haven't blocked us out here or deal broken us that are a pipeline, both out of Texas, a physical 6'2", 211 and 6'4", 188. We'll add both of them. Now we will also add Dom Cage here because we could look to bring in a tackle. He's a need, supposedly, and he's from a pipeline. Guard-wise, there is a power guy in Quan Wooden out of Wisconsin. He's not a pipeline, but the other guy is in Miles Vaughn, who is a pass protector. He might be a little bit more of a tackle. We'll take a look at both. Now, we do have Ume, who is a senior, and I see Nate Whitehurt here, and he's 6'5", 300 pounds. He's from New York. We talked about looking into the Big Apple players. Well, we have that with both him as well as Aiden Cush, though it doesn't fit what I'm talking about. He is a power rusher. Ume is a pass rusher for us. He's also number 3 on the list here. I think we'd be amiss if we don't take a look. Now, we're pretty good at run stoppers at that spot, but he is a 5-star from our pipeline. We'll add Brian Paschal to the list as well. And that is already all the 5 stars that either are from a pipeline or are kind of a need for us. We have 1,000 hours here So we are going to get to work, and we're going to go ahead and even skip taking a look at these guys' ratings. We're not going to scout them. They're 5 stars. They are more than welcome to join in. So we will go ahead and add these scholarships to all of the 5 stars. Next, we'll go in and add 4 stars. 4 stars because of how tight we are in terms of our roster limit. We will scout 4 stars, and if they don't match, we're not going to look into them. So speaking of 4 stars, just taking a quick look here, we actually have quite a few that are coming in from our pipeline, and we're starting just looking at receiver. We're going to go position of needs. Again, due to the lack of experience we have at this spot, I'm just going to take a look at all of them. The highest ranked would be a guy that we are currently listed 7th in interest out of Santa Ana, California, in Rafael Bargava? Maybe. Correct me on pronunciation. 6 foot, about 200 pounds. I like it. We'll add him to the list here. Not looking for any guys under 6 feet. I want a little bit of some height to this team because we can find height and we can find speed. And I think adding 4 there is plenty. Now, there was also only 1 tight end from the 5 stars that we were able to grab. So let's take a look here. Hugh Crum. Is he related to Victor? I don't know. He's a blocking guy, though. We like possession. We do have that with Daniel Kramer out of Las Vegas, Nevada, but he's not in a pipeline. We could still end up taking a look here because he has interest. Outside of pipeline, though, we want to go with the highest ranked, and that leaves us with Frederick Lyles, who is possession. We'll take a look at him. Vertical threat doesn't exactly fit, and then another blocker, jumping all the way down to 215, though from a pipeline, Atlanta, Georgia, another possession. He's 14th in position ranking, Corey Costello. We'll add him. And then for the rest, we're going to get a little bit more picky here. We're looking at top 100 in rank, and we want to find people that are interested in us, and if they're already a pipeline. A power blocker here at tackle in Jamie Sledge. That's a great name, maybe more for a guard. And at guard, we do have 2 other options. Randy Folk, he's agile. We prefer a little bit more power, and neither of these guys are. We'll move off from guard. Center, we have a couple options here. Cameron Conklin, he is a power guy and he's interested. Plus, we have a really good pipeline for him. Now, we're not currently in the interest for Doug Watts. He's a pass protector. He is from the pipeline. I think we could move off. We got plenty of center opportunity. Offensive end-wise, it is pretty light. There is one guy with interest in Dan Robert. He's 66 in ranking, not from a pipeline, but he's interested, so we'll give him a call. Next is Rudy Sheridor. Perhaps a run stopper, but he is from Tennessee, which is apparently a pipeline for us. So I'll go ahead and take that, add him to the board. Now we do have a couple outside linebackers graduating. We will take a look. Davion Gums. Interesting name. He's ranked 56. Has interest in us out of Oregon. We'll add him to that list. And that's the only option because, again, we're keeping above 100, though if we have to drop, there are other options. And other options could just be simply moving someone from middle linebacker. We do have a couple options. There is Tito Poe, a pass cover guy. We'll add him to that list. A name I would have to look up for sure, but Yabu maybe is the first one. I don't know. Again, you guys let me know with some of these names. And the last we'll add to the list is Dom Saban. Cornerback-wise, there is only one option again inside that top 100. We will add Ty Holly. He is a slot archetype. Free safety, not interested, but is from a pipeline in New Jersey. We have Alex Keenan, maybe related to Ed Keenan. I honestly don't remember where he's from. We're going to say brother of Ed Keenan. And at strong, one option here in Jamerson Madu, which is a fun name, again, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So that greatly expands our list all the way up to 31. But again, we expect that this list will get thinned out following this week. We will start going through and scouting and seeing if we have any gems. And we definitely found a lot of information here. Unfortunately, we found more busts than I think we found gems. We'll go position by position. 4-star quarterback we can skip over. Not looking at running back right now because I don't think we need a running back really at this point. Getting to the receivers, we found a lot of busts here. Sean Alabi, he's going to go ahead and move on. We are not going to be bringing in bust. Gilliam is also gone. We did find a gem here in Afa Lotulelli. Probably butchered that one as well. He's out of Corona, California with 79 deep route running, 95 speed out of high school. It's fast dude. He's got good hands, 80 catching, 81 spec catch. We don't have short route running, but catching traffic is a 77. Overall, at 6'4", 183 with 95 speed, he could be a really solid dude, so he will stay on the board. There's also Rafael Bargava. He is not a bust nor a gem, and he would be coming in here at 6 foot with 90 speed, has 73 release. Hands aren't as good as the other guy, plus we got 2 5-stars above him. We'll keep him on this list, but we're probably not going to push too heavy for him off the go. Now at tight end, we did do very well here. Of the 3 4-stars, only one of which was a bust. The other 2 are gems. So Costello, you are gone. Frederick Lyles. Again, both of these guys possession archetype. He's going to come in with 61 run block. Catching is at an 82. We don't know the speed. That's the only problem I have here with the possession guys, is that we don't get that speed. As for Kramer, 80 catching, 62 run block. So they're very similar guys, and honestly, I'd be probably happy with either one. Obviously, though, we're going to focus on Gomez. As for Jamie Sledge, talked about him maybe being a guard. He's going to come in with 89 strength. That's not too bad. 76 for run block, 73 pass block. So he's definitely a guard with 88 impact. We don't know the lead blocking. Then at center with Cameron Conklin, he is the other power guy, and he has 87 strength with 76 run blocking. Pass blocking, not currently known, but we do know pass block power is an 80. So he might just be an overall balanced guy when it comes to that, but we're just not going to have as much of the finesse blocking. At end, we did find a gem in Dan Robert. He is a speed rusher, and he's going to come in with 86 finesse moves. That would be really good. We're definitely keeping him on the board. Sherador, he has 83 block shedding at 6'2", 262. Does he provide much of any sort of pass rush? We're not really sure, but he'd be an interesting guy to keep on this list. He does have 84 strength, mixed with just 72 speed. So he's an interesting guy. Definitely would prefer the top 3 over him. As for Davon Gums, he ended up being a bust, so we're going to take him off that list, leaving us with some off-ball linebackers, of which Poe is gone because he's a bust. So we got Yabu, or however you pronounce the name, and Dom Saban. Saban is going to come in with 84 speed. Zone coverage is pretty low. He is a run stopper and has 71 block shed. The guys whose name we have to learn to pronounce, he's also a run stopper with that 71 block shed, 84 speed, 61 zone. So these guys are very similar. And at corner, Ty Holly, the slot guy, 5'11", 178. He's a small guy with 90 speed. Man is at a pretty good starting spot, 77, but zone, it's a work in progress at a 68. And press for him is unknown. As for the free safety, the possible brother of Ed Keenan, we will not be going after him. He is a bust. And as for the strong safety in Madu, we will also be removing him, not because he's a bust, but because he has 59 man coverage. That's not going to cut it for us here at strong safety. I would consider switching him over to free with 73 zone, but his speed is under 90. I need a guy with speed back there to cover over the top, while we typically play our safety closer to the line. Well, that rounds out this group. We currently have 24 on this list. We're going to go hard after the 5 stars. If we get them, then we'll make some decisions on some of the 4s, or if there are no 5 stars at positions of need, we'll go after the 4s. We're not going to spend all of our hours here because, again, due to our team needs, we're going to keep this class precise. We have 14 seniors graduating. Our roster is currently full. At the end of this, maybe we have 16, 17 players end up leaving after this year, with some going to the draft or transferring. So we're going to play it tight, not overdo things like we did with the last recruiting class, though we pulled in the second best. So take it or leave it. But heading into this next season, we have some questions surrounding our offense. Elijah Brown, he didn't have a fantastic junior year, though pretty well managed. I mean, the team overall did very well. We had a Heisman winner, though, that maybe helped elevate us. Running back is going to look a little bit different. Parrish is going to be the main guy, but we're finally going to see a little bit more here of Montrell Dog, a little bit more power to the offense. And that's also thanks to the receiving group here. I mean, we are very outside of Haddad, a very inexperienced group. Keenan played a little bit out there at receiver last year. He's mostly a returner for us, and he probably isn't the brother of the guy that we decided no on because he's from Anaheim, California, not the opposite corner of the United States. But we're also going to see a little bit of some freshmen here. We got to decide who's going to be redshirted. So it might be we just give a few of these guys an opportunity here and there, make sure they stay under 4 games, and then make that decision. And at tight end, Buck had a rough year last year. A lot of drops. He's got to clean that up. McCoy is there, and while he doesn't have the speed, he has more sure hands than Buck. And maybe, who knows, the freshman outperforms both of them and we go with him. We'll see how that position sits. Offensive line-wise, we should be pretty good. Going to have an 84 starting left tackle, 89 at left guard, but we do have an 88 here who could look to fill in and probably be the primary backup all across the offensive line. Because at center, we have 89 in Dean Roth. At right guard, 90 in Pale and another 88 in Simons. Getting to the defensive side, Nelson starts at an 88. Opposite to him, Sony Fotu an 86. Then down the middle, you have Howerton with an 85 and Ume 83. And seeing some rotation, we'll see Cantwell at a 79. True freshman, we'll get this start in Kiki. Got to look up the last name, an 80 overall. We'll see a little bit of some time, some back and forth between Roseboom and himself, as Richardson gets the start at an 85. Right outside linebacker, and your leader of this defense is Rico Cote, a 90 overall. At the cornerback spot, still got to do a little bit of some deciding here. Antonio Asher will be the starter. Who goes on the opposite side of him and who plays in the slot, we will find out next time. At free safety, we will probably start with Sumlin. If we see consistent problem there, Atkins will fill in, and perhaps even Atkins and Sumlin play the safety, and then we have Camp come down with that 4-2-5 defense, and he plays in the slot a little bit more. We've got options this year. We're going to start flexing them around. Camp is coming in at an 87. Special teams wise, ETN an 83, and the true freshman punter in Mays a 70. Well, that is where we leave it off this go around. There wasn't as much to do in recruiting this off season. We did a lot of it in season. We had a successful recruiting year as well as a successful season. Now what we need to see from the team, and it's what the schedule was trying to help show, is that the Cardinal are real. And next time, if we have a similar season, same amount of wins or more, don't give us Akron in the bowl game.